And welcome to Compass. Great to have you here. Thank you for starting off your weekend with us. If you're a guest, so glad you chose to be with us this morning as well. Facebook Live, thanks for checking in. So glad you guys are with us also. Last weekend, we're gonna have our friend Maximus hanging out. We're gonna wrap up this fight series today. You did hear, you should have got in your seat this little card. And I've got these little buckets on the side. I'm going to invite all of us at the end to make some kind of a commitment to how we're gonna fight this fight that we're in. So I just wanna warn you now. I'm gonna encourage you to do that with all of us towards the end of service, because today we are wrapping up our fight series with our final marriage, or our final message, not marriage. I don't know where that came from. That was weird. I really hope this has opened up your eyes to this unseen fight and unseen battle for our lives that all of us are in. And so we're going to finish up today. I hope we finish up really strong. I'm going to show you what I think is one of the best battle-ready scenes and prayers in the Bible toward the end. But first, before we get there, in the movie 12 Strong, anybody seen 12 Strong? A few? I got a handful. I have not seen it because it features Chris Hemsworth, right? AKA Thor. And my wife has a slightly unhealthy crush on him. Hey, which I totally get, because I do too, right? Like, I get it, right? I want to be him. So I didn't want to fuel that fire. But listen, in the book, I Declare War, it talks about the true story that is depicted in 12 Strong, which takes place in the days right after 9/11, when Al-Qaeda is hiding out and laying low in the mountains of Afghanistan. And so this group of brave / crazy American soldiers, led by the character played by Hemsworth in this movie, they agree to join forces with this local warlord who has promised them that he will help them get close enough to the enemy, right, to the terrorists, where they will be within striking distance, right? So they're literally about to go to battle with this unseen enemy. The problem, however, right, and the danger with that is they don't know for sure if they can trust this local warlord, right? The moment they enter the country, there's a bounty, right? There's a price on their head, and there's no real true allegiances, right? It's just every man for himself. It's whatever's going to profit you, whatever's the most beneficial to you. So this is for sure a risky move and a risky play. Okay, on top of that, and to complicate matters further, they can't take traditional, military vehicles through these mountain passes to sneak up on Al-Qaeda. So instead, they have to travel via horseback, right? So like some old Western, they're trying to get the drop on the bad guys in the black hats riding horses, right? And so one of the most heart-pounding moments comes, and it takes place when these soldiers charge, right, onto the battlefield on their horses to go against full-blown, tanks and trucks that are stacked with machine guns. All the soldiers have, right, all the Americans have are their firearm, whatever firearm, and like a grenade in another hand, whatever it is that they can carry while they're riding horseback. And so listen, it for sure would have been game over and end of story as soon as they go out on the field or on the battleground, except that they have a laser pointer and a satellite phone, right? And with those two things, they are able to call for fire to rain down from the sky. So first, think about this. It's not what they brought onto the battlefield that made them dangerous, but who was on the other end of the phone, which, the most powerful military in the history of mankind. So with B-52 bombers circling overhead, all the soldiers had to do was mark their target with the laser pointer and then give the command on their phone. And power from above came to their rescue. All right? So think about this. We're in this series called Fight, and we're looking at Paul's words to these early followers of Jesus about this unseen battle that they're in. And he starts off talking about this power. He writes this in Ephesians 6, verse 10. He says, "Be strong in the Lord," and what? In his mighty power, right? In this power that you need from above. Paul also writes this in 2 Corinthians about this fight that we're in. He writes, "For though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary," watch this, "they have divine power Divine power to demolish the strongholds. So the last thing that we want to do, and the biggest mistake that we could make, is to go to battle and to try and do God's work without having God's power. And I thought about this as well. So the Avengers movies are kind of big these days. Maybe you've seen an Avenger movie. My family, we were just at Disneyland, and they're right now working on a brand new attraction called Stark Industries, right? Based on Tony Stark, AKA Iron Man. In the third Iron Man movie, if you've seen that, there's a scene where Tony's suit, it begins to malfunction, right? And the autopilot feature short circuits on him. So all of a sudden it just like whisks him halfway across the country from, I believe he was in Malibu on that scene, halfway across the country into the snow-covered countryside of Tennessee, where he crash lands into these snow-covered fields. So he's there, he's in his suit, it's kind of still short-circuiting on him, so he's a little claustrophobic. He hits the eject button and realizes, oh, it's really chilly here in the snow, right? Not in Malibu anymore, wishes he'd stayed wrapped up in his nice warm little suit. But then the scene goes on, and he ends up dragging, right, his suit behind him, and he's like plodding through the snow, kind of like a kid with a sled, except not near as much fun, okay? So he's dragging that thing, and he's like all winded and weary, just slowly putting one foot in front of the other, trying to drag it into town and to do some work on it. And I thought about that image, right? Because the suit was not designed to be carried by him. It was designed to carry him as he executed his calling, right? And he faced his enemies and faced villains, various enemies in the movie. Okay, well, we've been talking throughout this fight series about this armor, right? We've got this image here, this armor of God, which we are to put on, but so that it can help carry us, right? Not that we're carrying it, carry us into the battle and empower us for this fight with this unseen enemy that we're going up against. God's power, not our power. Okay, well today, here's what I want, as we're wrapping up, I want to take a look at our laser pointer and our cell phone or our satellite phone, if I can lean into that analogy to help us call on power, right, from above, and to help us get through these battles and these fights that you and I are for sure up against. And if you're new, right, if you're just coming in, you can go back and check all these out online at compass.church. But we've been looking at this really power-packed, battle-ready passage that Paul writes in Ephesians 6. And of course, Maximus here has helped us model kind of some of the gear that he's talked about. Well, Paul starts off that section again, if you remember, reminding us that we have the world that we can see, right? The chair you're sitting in, the car you drove up in, the person next to you, the world we see, and the world that we cannot see. And so we're in this fight for our lives with this unseen world, right? Which is how Paul started explaining. He talks about this in verse 11, and we talked about how hashtag the struggle is real, even if you can't see it. And he wrote this, verse 11, put on all of God's armor, we'll read this one more time, so that you will be able to stand firm against all strategies of the devil. For we are not fighting against flesh and blood enemies, right? Our ultimate battle is not against people, but against the evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against mighty powers in this dark world, and against evil spirits in the heavenly places. So the big idea is we're in this very real battle with a very real enemy, right? The enemy, Satan, Lucifer, the evil one, the father of lies, the prince of darkness. We got a lot of different language, which you do realize Satan did not start out as a demon, right? Do you know this? He actually started out as an angel, right, created by God, who became jealous of God, didn't just want to be with God. He wasn't okay with that. He wanted to be God. So this is not going to go well. Rebelled against the God that made him, which is, again, terrible idea. Rebelled against God, got kicked out of heaven along with a third of the angels who traded their God or Jesus jersey in on the Satan jersey, right? So they switched teams and ended up, getting voted off the island and doing the walk of shame along with Satan. So again, they started off not as demons, but as fallen, rebellious angels. So here's how Isaiah describes this moment in his letter in Isaiah 14. We read this. How you are fallen from heaven, O shining star, right? And this is referring to Satan, son of the morning. You have been thrown down to the earth, you who destroyed the nations of the world. For you said to yourself, and watch some of the language here, I will ascend to the heaven and set my throne above God's stars. I will preside on the mountains of the gods far away in the north. Then once again, I will climb to the highest heavens and be like the Most High. So there you have it right there. Basically, this is Satan wanting to kick God off of his throne. And again, it does not go well for him because, and notice this, unlike Jesus, who would say, not my will, but your will be done. Lucifer, this morning star, is all about my will and what I want and how I will do things. And we'll look at Jesus' very different approach and his very different response here in just a moment. But the point is, we've got these evil rulers and these unseen forces that are fighting against us to steal and to destroy your hope and your joy and goodness and our eternity. And so God has made some of these tools, these armor, this gear available so that we could fight back and win the war. So we've been saying, we want you to declare war and be battle ready. And then we went through all these different elements, the belt of truth, right? The breastplate of righteousness, the shoes of peace, the shield of the faith, helmet of salvation, and then the sword of the Spirit. So we've covered these the last couple weeks. And again, go online and check them out if you missed those weeks. But then, after Paul lists all these parts of armor, he wraps up with one final tool and one piece that is essential to the battle and that is essential to our victory, okay? And do you want to know what that is? You want to look? We're going to. And I'm going to highlight a couple of things that Paul says that I want you to really pay attention to. Then we'll go back and talk about it. So here's what we read now in verse 18. He tells us after going through this body armor, he says this, finally, pray in the Spirit at all times and on every occasion. So which occasion? All of them. Every occasion, stay alert and be persistent in your prayers for all believers everywhere. So he's basically letting us know that if you really, really want to be battle ready, well, then you need to be in constant communication with God, right? It's like you just have to stay alert, be persistent. You have him on speed dial, right? Talking all the time, because communication oftentimes, right, is the difference between victory and defeat. And again, like these soldiers in 12 Strong, it becomes kind of our laser pointer and it becomes our satellite phone to help us stay connected to and to access our power source. Think about this statement. Prayer, speaking of prayer is a weapon that the enemy does not have, right? He doesn't have that tool that he cannot stop, and the one thing that he has no defense against. So he might slow it down a little bit. I'm going to show you an example here in a moment, but he cannot stop it. And so in the heat of any battle that you and I face spiritually with the unseen world, prayer is critical to our fight. So let's go back and let's look at these different parts that Paul highlighted. And then again, I'm going to show you one of the most powerful humble or battle-ready scenes in the Bible after that. So here's what we read, or here's the first three things if you want to take notes. Number one, pray always, all right? Here's what he told us in verse 18, pray in the Spirit at all times and on every occasion. So prayer becomes like breathing. Maybe you've heard the analogy that prayer is like our spiritual oxygen, right? It should just become automatic and second nature. Like no one in the room goes to bed at night and thinks, did I breathe or not today? If you didn't breathe, you will know, right? It's just automatic. It's something you need to do always in order to stay spiritually healthy, right? And I say that as an absolute hypocrite and the person that struggles to have prayer as my default or go-to weapon, right? I don't always think about praying, but I understand the importance of it, and I've been trying to discipline myself to become a better prayer. Paul writes this in 1 Thessalonians 5, never stop at all. Don't stop praying. Keep the lines of communication always open. Prayer is like this hotline, right, for us, where it's always available, it's always open, we always want to do it, not just before meals, right? Not just when you tuck your kids in bed at night. We want to develop this prayer life where we are consistently and constantly connected to and communicating to God. Again, not just when we need stuff or when things are really hard. Which, like guys, imagine, how well does that work in your marriage? right? If you were to only talk to your wife, hang out with your wife, compliment your wife whenever you needed something, wanted something, or trying to get something, right? Do I need to elaborate? Or if she comes up to you and says, hey, do you still love me? And you're like, I told you I loved you on our wedding day. If that changes, I'll send you a memo, right? She will send you to sleep with the dog, right? That's what you'll get. So you won't have a healthy marriage, and you won't feel strong, and you won't feel connected if that is how you communicate. So there Paul tells us, pray always, right? All the time. Sometimes it's just short, quick, sweet little prayers. Kind of like Jesus' prayer in John 11 when he goes to heal Lazarus. So basically, if I can summarize, he's like, all right, God, this is what you want. This is what I want. Boom, let's do it, right? Just in and out. We don't need to talk about this for a long time. So sometimes it's saying hi. Sometimes you're just checking in, like, what's up, Dad? How's it going? It's not an SOS. It's not a Mayday emergency call. It's not a State of the Union address. It doesn't have to be long. You're just checking in. Sometimes it is going to take a while, like Jesus' prayer in Gethsemane, okay? You might need to pack a lunch and snacks, right? Because you're just gonna be there for a while, right? It's like, okay, God, here's what you want right here. And here's what I want way over here, right? So there's a big gap between what you want and what I want. So I'm going to need to get down on my face in prayer until I come to that spot where I can say, not my will, but your will be done. So I'm gonna need to carve out some time to get to that place because listen, I'm not there yet, right? Not even really close. And that's okay, right? I think that you can say that, but it's important that you are in this constant state of communication. The next thing he tells us, Paul hits on this in Ephesians, stay alert. So the idea there is, right, keep your hands up, like don't drop your guard. Prayer helps you stay aware of the attacks that the enemy brings against you. It's almost like a spiritual spidey sense, if you will, right? If you watch Spider-Man movies, like whenever he's about to be attacked or something's coming, like the hair on the back of his neck or on his arm stands up and starts to tingle to let him become aware something's coming. Okay, prayer can be function like this spiritual spidey sense where when you know when something's coming at you that you need to watch out for. Prayer helps you stay spiritually alert to your surroundings, to the attacks or to the temptations that are coming at you. When you're praying, you become more sensitive to those things that are going on, right? Jesus consistently would break away from his busy life to go and spend time alone with God and to pray because it prepared him to counter, right, the attacks of Satan and his lies and his deceit. We read this in 1 Peter 5. We've talked about this every week. Stay alert, right? Watch out for your great enemy, the devil. He prowls around like a lion looking for someone to devour. That's what he would love to do, is destroy you. Jesus tells us this in Luke 21. Keep alert, again, at all times, and pray that you might be strong enough to escape these coming horrors and stand before the Son of Man. And so prayer helps you, again, be aware. So pray, always stay alert. And then the third thing he lets us know, be persistent, right? And the idea is be annoyingly persistent. And listen, because God is not like you and I whenever it comes to our kids and their requests of us, where I'm like, ask me again, right? Like if you ask me one more time, I will donate everything you own to Goodwill and you will sleep on the porch, right? Just me? Whatever. But Jesus tells the parable about the persistent widow that keeps coming to the judge and pestering him and bothering him and over, driving him crazy until he's finally like, all right, whatever you want. And in that whole parable, Jesus is letting us know, be persistent like that, right? He tells us God wants us to pray to him in that manner. And here's what we read, Matthew chapter 7. Jesus tells us, keep on asking and you will receive what you ask for. Keep on seeking and you will find. Keep on knocking and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, everyone who seeks finds, and to everyone who knocks, the door will be open. So listen, keep asking and keep seeking and keep knocking and keep asking and keep seeking and keep knocking and be annoyingly persistent. Because listen, Your prayers are so much more powerful than you know. Your prayers really are. And they help you and I stay connected to the power source. So there's a really interesting example in the Old Testament with Daniel, where Daniel's been praying and he feels like, and it seems like nothing is happening. But then all of a sudden, a messenger from God shows up to him with these words. Listen to this, interesting insight. Daniel 10, verse 12. Don't be afraid, Daniel, right? So this is what the angel's telling him. Since the first day you began to pray for understanding and to humble yourself before your God, your request has been heard in heaven. I have come in answer to your prayer. So from day one, God hears Daniel's prayer and he's working, right? He's on the move in the spirit world. But then listen to what the messenger says in verse 13. But for 21 days, the spirit prince of the kingdom of Persia blocked my way, right? Like an offensive lineman trying to keep him from getting to the quarterback. Blocked my way. Then Michael, one of the archangels, came to help me. And I left him there with the spirit prince of the kingdom of Persia. Now I am here to explain what will happen to your people in the future. So as soon as Daniel began to pray, God heard, right? And he released an angel. However, for 21 days, he's being resisted by this evil spirit until backup shows up, right? Like Michael comes, he's like, handle this fool, I got stuff to do. And he takes care of that. And then he's able to deliver the message. But the point is, prayer is a powerful weapon. And even when we can't necessarily see it, God is on the move. So here's what I want to do in closing to really help us practically, right? I want to drill this down to a practical level and help you see what this looks like and maybe help you in some of your prayers. And again, look at one of the most powerful, humble prayers prayed in the Bible by Jesus himself when he's facing his greatest spiritual battle, I would argue, of his life on earth. So it takes place Matthew 26, right? And again, Jesus is our example, and Jesus prayed throughout his life. And in Matthew 26, okay, at this point, Jesus knows that the cross is on the horizon and that his execution, it is fast approaching him. So we find Jesus in this scene just overwhelmed, man, and we find him lonely and facing betrayal and suffering and the most difficult moment of his life. To which I would say for these last just couple of moments, I just want you to picture, right? Like the day that you'll be betrayed or that you will be abandoned or that you will weep, right? That moment that you will really hurt. And Jesus doesn't doubt God, doesn't blame, doesn't deny, doesn't accuse him. He prays to him, right? He will talk to the Father because he knows that this unseen enemy is about to hit hard. So he is preparing and powering up to fight back. So let's go look at Matthew 26 and kind of walk through this prayer. We read this starting in verse 36. Then Jesus went with them to the Olive Garden of Gethsemane. So the Last Supper's wrapped up. He's with his disciples, heads out to this garden. And he said, sit here while I go over there to, what is it? Pray, right? So first thing I want you to notice, Jesus needed to pray. Don't miss the significance of this. That if Jesus needs to pray as he's about to fight this really heavy physical and spiritual battle, guess what? We're probably going to need to do as well, right? We're going to need to pray. I read one guy that suggested that because Jesus laid aside his equality with God, right, and he made himself nothing, we read this in Philippians 2, laid aside his rights, made himself nothing, that he truly had to lean into and rely on the power of the Holy Spirit during his time here on earth, just like we're called to do. So prayer was one way he really communicated and connected with God throughout his ministry and throughout his life. So you and I, whenever going into the battle, during these dark seasons when you're sick or lonely or sad or tired, we need to talk to God. So he goes to pray. We read this in verse 37. He took Peter and Zebedee's two sons, James and John, and he became anguished and distressed. So he leaves part of his crew. He takes 3 with him, becomes anguished and distressed. He told them, my soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me. To which I would say, this should be slightly comforting and encouraging to you, because if Jesus can feel devastated and overwhelmed and sad, then so can we, right? It allows you and I to be sad, because if Jesus can do it, I feel like that gives us permission. So sometimes, and maybe you've heard this, or maybe you've talked to someone that has said, if you love God enough, and if you have enough faith, then you don't ever have to be sad, right? If you do, then everything will work out and all things will turn out just the way you want them. You can be a total victor. To which I would say, that sounds great, right? And that would be so awesome, except for the actual Bible, yeah? Listen, you're saying, if you have enough faith in Jesus, well then you could really be nothing like Jesus, right? Which I think that's kind of a weird statement. So Jesus here he's devastated, right? He's feeling the weight of the spiritual battle that he's about to go through. Luke tells us in his gospel that he sweat, right? Drops of blood. You have to be in a state of extreme angst to ever get to that kind of condition, right? Most of us will never get in that level of angst and anxiety and stress. And so Jesus comes to God, right? To Dad, humbly and very respectfully, but also honestly going, Dad, this is hard. It is a dark season and I am struggling right now. To which I would say, on the day you find out you have cancer, right? On the day that you lose your job out of the blue and you're not gonna know how to provide for the family. On the day that your spouse leaves you find out they were being unfaithful. On the day you lose the child. On the day that you get the call from the family member that says, mom passed away and she didn't know Jesus. Okay, what you don't need to do on that day is pretend that life is easy and that you're not crushed by the news. Right? You need to be able to go to God and say, this is painful, and it's really, really hard right now. And if you buy into, if you've been around part of some belief system that says if you have enough faith and love God enough, then you'll never have hardship or difficulty. Okay, what happens when you do, right? Or if you really love God enough, you'll always be healthy. What happens when you're not? Right? Or you'll always be rich. What happens when you're poor? Your belief system then fails you when you need it the most, which is why I love the beauty and the brutal honesty of God's word here. So Jesus needs to pray, right? He's gonna pray late into the evening, because more important than sleep is being connected to God. So here's where he prays, or here's what we read, verse 39, because he knows serious battle prep going on here. He went on a little further and bowed with his face to the ground, praying, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup of suffering be taken away from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine. So picture here, Jesus breaks off, right, from Peter, James, and John, goes out a little ways, falls on his face. He's like, God, I would really like to do this another way, right? What it is you are asking me to go through, I don't want to go through that. I don't want it. But then he follows it up and says, yet not my will, but your will be done. I picture back to our At the Movies series, that first movie, The Finest Hours, where the Coast Guard, they said, the motto is we have to go out. We don't have to come back. Right? So this is a different kind of prayer, right, than many of us pray, or that sometimes I want to pray, because many times we treat God like a genie in a bottle, right? Aladdin just came out, genie in a bottle, and kind of prayer is sort of our to-do list, right, for him. Here it is, God, and I asked for more than 3 wishes, so I got them all, and here's all the things I need for you. If you really want to get battle ready, and if you really want to become a great prayer, I'll tell you what you need. Honesty and the ability to trust God, right? Honesty and humility, where you're going, God, I'm confused, right? And I am struggling with what I'm walking into and going through right now. And what I'm walking through, I'm not even sure I can bear it. Like, I don't even know, yet not my will be done, right? There's a lot of honesty there, but also trust and confidence. And my hope for you is that you would come to that place where you can tell God how it is you're feeling, right? Respectfully, but also honestly. So Jesus goes and he prays that, and he spends a good hour or so there, and then he comes back. And do you know what he finds? He finds his boys praying. Nope. What are they doing? They're asleep, right? Snoozing on Jesus on the biggest moment of his life. But before you judge them, because I know we're tempted to be like, oh, you guys are pathetic. Okay, before you judge them, I would say identify with them, right? I pray often at night before I go to bed. Do you know how many of those prayers end with me saying amen? And how many end with me snoring to the glory of God? Right? So, a little sympathy for the boys here. He finds them, wakes them up, invites them to keep praying. He goes back out. Here's what we read in verse 42. Then Jesus left them a second time, and he prayed, my Father, if this cup cannot be taken away unless I drink it, your will be done. And maybe you think there, all right, like what happened? Did he not just pray that? What was God not paying attention? Was he taking a nap? Is he getting old and forgot his hearing aid? Like what happened there, right? Okay, here's what I think. I think that Jesus puts not my will, but your will be done on repeat is so that it will penetrate his soul. Right? Because like there are some things, you can't just open the air one time, volley that prayer, and you're good to go. You have to come back to that well over and over and over again until it sticks and it starts to sink in. Right? Because I think that if we're honest, there are times we don't really want to pray that prayer, right? Like deep inside, most of us think that we know what is best for our lives and what it is that we really, really need. And like we don't want God to disagree with us or change what it is that we really hope for. I mean, come on, right? Do sometimes we not think that if I really trust God and tell God it is okay for God to do whatever it is he wants to do, then somehow he might, fail me or let me down or not give me the life that I deserve. Anyone else? Just being honest up here and feeling really lonely. So what we do, right, we like to just bring our blueprint, right, here's my blueprint, and give it to God and like, hey, here you go. Make it look just like that. Thanks, big guy. And they're like, whoa, like it looks like you're making some edits. Like, whoa, no, don't mess with it, right? I've got it all laid out. If you could just do it exactly the way I planned for it and told you to do, that would be great, right? And we're kind of like when your 5-year-old comes to you with a crayon sketch on a napkin and stick figures of how you should run the company. You're like, how? That's cute, right? Like I'll put it over here to review later. Trust me. So we should, right? You absolutely should bring all of your desires to God, all your hopes, all your requests. Keep asking, keep knocking, keep asking, keep seeking, keep hoping, keep believing, keep expecting. And then you should follow that up with, not my will be done, but yours. And like, that's hard, is it not? It's hard because evil is real, right? And sickness and suffering and betrayal and abandonment and lies, all those things are very, very real. And so the thing is, following Christ doesn't always necessarily get us out of the injustice or the pain or the hurt or the hardship, but what it does do is get us in relationship with God and with Christ so that we could get through it. So Jesus prays, man, and he prays again for an hour, and then he comes back and finds his boys asleep again, and then he wakes them up and he goes back and he prays a third time, praying the same thing, man. He's working it out. And then he finishes up this scene with these words in verse 45. He says this, he says, look, the time has come, the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. So up and let us be going. Look, my betrayer is here. And I'm telling you, like you have to have a great imagination and picture this, because I picture as he's saying this, that the music begins to build, right? Like the music starts to swell. I hear the Rocky theme song in the background, like dun, 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 dun. Like that's how I hear it. Because from this moment, he sets his face to the cross, right? And his resolve is unshakable. And he is prayed up and he is powered up. And listen, his time in prayer did not change his circumstances here, but they changed him. And they prepared him to walk through and to battle and to persevere well. So listen, he did receive power from above. And sometimes that power crushes that thing that's right in front of you, that's opposing you, that is fighting against you. Sometimes it strengthens you to persevere through it well. But you don't get to either one of those. You can't get there without that kind of prayer and connection to God. And that's what I want for you as we fight our battle, right? You might be surrounded by something that's difficult for you, but the things surrounding that are God is bigger. And I want to help you battle well. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna wrap up. And I don't want us to be hyper spiritual about these things, but not naive either. I want you to be battle ready and persevere well. So you should have got on your seat this little card, man. And there's a tear off section with some things that you can check, right? I want you to consider these list of things where you could declare war and fight. Because here's what Satan would love to do. Walk through this series, kind of raise your awareness to some of the things you're going up against, and then he would love to just lull you back to this like just kind of sleep, indifference, knowing you should fight for your marriage, your finances, or your purpose, or your kids, but then get busy again, get distracted. So I want you, and there's some things on here, some ways you can commit, again, to your purpose, to your calling, to your finances, to your marriage. And I will follow up. A lot of these don't even start till the fall, but I want you to take the initiative to decide today, right? Where are some areas I'm gonna fight? We're gonna have a Rooted 2.0. It's called Life in Rhythm. You could do that if you've been through Rooted. We've got a FPU. We've got a great marriage conference coming up in the fall. We're gonna sing this song. May I have you stand? We're gonna sing. But I've got buckets on both sides here, these little tin buckets. I wanna encourage you to, once we start singing, check one of those boxes, give us your information, because we're gonna follow up and encourage you to keep fighting whenever these things come up, and drop them in the bucket. So let me pray. You guys stand. Go ahead and stand. I'm gonna pray. We're gonna sing, and you're gonna bring your cards forward. Heavenly Father, thank you for loving us enough to prepare us for the fight and promise to be our power source in it if we would just lean into you. So I pray we would fight our battles and lean into you and see victory in your name. We pray this in Jesus' name.